welcome. Thanks for joining. I'm Brandon Webster, the director of Gallery 2112, and I'm sitting here with Maryanne Pollock, whose exhibition Rebirth the Earth is currently up for viewing. It runs until November 14th, and hours are Saturday, Sunday, 12 to 5. Actually, appointments during the week are encouraged as well. I'm guessing most of you know Maryanne, but for those who do not, a little bit about her. Maryanne is a DC-based artist, but she also has a studio in New York City. You probably travel more than anyone I know. It goes back and forth every week. You received your BFA from Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia, and you represented the United States in an exhibition at the 54th Venice Biennial. And also at the Arts and Embassies program in Egypt. You actually lived in Egypt for 6 years, which I find interesting. You speak a little bit of Arabic, yes?
Qalilan. Kind of like Brooklynese, you know, for classical Arabic. But I did study here in Washington at the Middle East Institute.
Okay, and you also lived in Italy and studied in Italy as well.
Yeah, big influence.
I was photographing your work. I have got my start photographing art here in Washington for artists and different galleries, which was a great opportunity for me to get to know different artists and galleries here in Washington, and my little way to promote, the art that's coming out of Washington. And so the gallery is a natural extension of that. And here we're at DuPont Circle on R Street, but there's a great history with like R Street and Q Street with having galleries showing DC art. So should we just get started, like talking about what the first start with Rebirth the Earth?
Cool. So we'll have like a little slideshow. I hope it's legible on your end. This is a 4x4 foot painting. It was started in 2017 during Hurricane Maria. The the first markings were really kind of a rageful reaction. In fact, bombastic, explosive reaction to I felt the way people were being treated there. And it was the worst environmental disaster ever to hit the islands. And people are still cleaning up in Puerto Rico and Haiti, and some of the Haiti being the poorest country, right, in the world, on the planet. And I listen to NPR a lot. I listen to a lot of news, and I don't know, maybe it's a way of processing the news. But anyway, if you see, there's kind of a central axis which acts as a kind of vertebrae, palm, almost like the trunk of a palm tree. This theme of ascendance and descendants comes through my work a lot. When you come to the show, there are some works on paper, and there's a double helix, and that's a theme I come back to, this idea of concentric forces coming from the earth and ascending above. Anyway, I left the painting, and I just didn't know how to resolve it. And then I'm in New York and moved in January, right before the pandemic. And, my friends are all like, well, I guess that's it for New York, I did take the last class out and spent a few months here. Just really hunkered down like all of us. And I was thinking about, and because I feel like the work should hold on its own, but I was thinking a lot about oxygenation, you know, how building immunity, the environment, all kinds of things. By that time, I received my master gardening certificate from UDC. So then I was a vermiculturalist for you know, Title I school, not Title I, but a school that's really exemplary of excellent things that can be done in public education. It's called Horace Mann. So thinking about the soil, but I'm thinking about, you know, Black as a potential. I don't want to say too much, but those are my hands, you know. So prior, there was a very physical reactionary kind of energy that went in. And then through transcendental meditation, these kind of little oxygen cells or molecules of water or potential or orbs, planets, and then this kind of Earth-like thing came. And I guess I just want to say this, just arbitrarily perhaps. I remember the story about how the first, maybe one of the first Apollo flights, there were all these astronauts looking and saying, oh, there's my country. And forgive me, I don't remember where exactly everyone was from, but perhaps someone was saying, oh, no, Apollo was all American, right? It was a consequent flight, more international. And someone was like, this is Russia, oh, look at France. Oh my gosh, there's Saudi Arabia. And I know that there was a Saudi Arabian in there because that especially hit me. And then at one point, it was just one big Earth, this fragile little Earth floating in this blackness. And that's when, you know, kind of universally, it hit us how we share this one world. And I'm really dating myself. This is very 70s, you know, and, you know, I remember making the first Earth Day poster. And anyway, I'm totally dating myself. But so it's been a big concern all these years. But for me, that painting it speaks to a lot of potential. This painting, it's called Fall of Kabul. It happened, I was listening to the news and painting it. And so I was living in Cairo during the bombing of Iraq. And what to say? Well, just to say something about Colin Powell, since he just passed. He acknowledged the Americans who were in that state, in the State Department, especially at the time, and I think especially now, wow, that we were arts diplomats. And, you know, we had to answer a lot of the hard questions. We were in the clubs and the bars and the streets and the galleries with the Egyptian artists. And Maria, I don't know if you were able to access the videos, but maybe later on, if there's time, like to just take a little glimpse at a video of these Egyptian kids dancing this special dance that they made for the Egyptian Revolution, which for me was one of the most exciting things that ever happened in our lifetime. You know, I think it's symbolic of the kind of energy that's happening on the planet that's a very, very positive energy it's going to save us. I don't mean to be dramatic, but I believe that at least, you know, in many ways, environmentally, spiritually, politically. And anyway, so I was hoping that, you know, when I was doing this, I was thinking about people having to leave their families behind. There are so many orphans that were left that night. And having to, like, this idea of war on terror, that there's a good guy and a bad guy, and that there is such a thing as good and evil. As an educator, I don't want to get too philosophical, but I don't know about evil. I don't know that evil actually exists. From a psychological point of view, people are put into situations where they have to make these drastic decisions on the night that you have to leave your home and maybe even your country. You know, I was just thinking about people going through borders, and Anyway, this is a visual thing, so I don't want to do too much backstory, but it's a question that I have a lot in my mind. It certainly makes it simplistic to say. I hear this a lot lately. Toxic people. He's really toxic. I need to stay away from him. And I don't know. I had to say that. You know, it's trending, right? Like that we put labels on each other, and then that stops the conversation. So for me, that was about immigration, transmutation, borders. And as a second generation Irish immigrant, it's a big topic that I come back to a lot, you know. So let's move on to the next image. Yep. Okay, great. Yeah, that painting, I think we talked about this. You came to visit when I was doing this artist in residence. I kind of just made it up, needing to get some fresh ocean air, and Rehoboth Beach is a real happy place for me, and it's a very spiritual place. My dad had a house there, and we used to find arrowheads. It's a place where the Nanticoke Indians lived, and it's just it's big happy place for me. Anyway, I left the painting outside and felt like, so when I came to it the next morning, it was like half gone or just like a big blob. And so I manipulated, you know, it's more of a reductive process. And I felt like it was kind of humorous that nature had really painted itself, you know, it's a process.
Collaboration.
It was a total COVID collaboration.
It works.
It works. That's called upsurge. Next. And I think I talked a lot about the Kabul. The only thing maybe I would mention too is living in an Islamic country really, I think, has been a huge gift. It was a gift to me to have gone there in 1997 to Cairo, and I think that there's also reminiscence of Cairo in that painting, and thinking about again, I don't want to do a narrative after the painting's done, because that's not, the work is abstract, and so it's many things beyond what I'm saying, and then a lot of what I'm not saying. So sometimes I glimpse something 20 years later and realize, that's it. You know, we're talking about metals, and this idea of this led to the transmitter series, that there are metals in our bodies. There are metals as conduits. There are coppers. Actually, it's interesting too. Copper is the oldest metal that was mined in 8,000 years BC. So 10,000 years it's been in existence and in use. And it came out of the Middle East. So this idea, and certainly the ancient Egyptians were very aware of metals as being, I have, not to promote my own website, but I had a company called Obelisk Galleries, and the obelisk, Queen Hatshepsut had this gold at the top of her obelisk. And so it's so beautiful, right? So the Nile is all fertile. I'm imagining that as you come down or up, right? Because it's Upper Egypt, comes up into the Mediterranean, you would see this golden triangle. I can imagine how dramatic it would be at dusk or something like that. So it functioned on all kinds of levels. And that fascinates me. Okay, so Brandon, you're a West Coaster. Have you been to St. Louis Obispo?
I have.
You
yes.
have?
Yeah,
oh, cool.
Absolutely. Worth visiting.
Worth visiting. I've only been to California once, embarrassed to say, but I was really struck with this kind of rock, building rock sculptures.
Stacking rocks.
Yeah. Is that something you guys do on the West Coast?
It probably started out there, is my guess.
As all good things do, all evolved things. So yeah, and then only to find out that that's really a Celtic tradition. So I don't know. I've come back to this image over and over again, and it's called the Obispo series. So yeah, so there's that one, and I think it's probably more purely the most purely abstract painting series that I think I've done.
But it's not abstract. I mean, it is, but
well,
it's based on, you know.
It is, but if you saw the rock stackings, you wouldn't see, you know, any kind of representation at all.
Which leads me to a thought that you had. You one time said that you abstracts are really landscapes. So that's sort of a good example of that comment that you've made.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that you know, why I keep coming back to it is the landscape sort of lives inside of me. So I was trained very classically at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and after Tyler. So simultaneously, I do plein air landscapes in order to absorb them and build the vocabulary. So what happens is, although that's a visual response, these are more of a kind of felt response and lived with. So maybe there's this enmeshing with my subconscious mind. So maybe it becomes something a little bit more, I don't know, universal in theme. I'd like to think. I'm not working toward that, but
it ends up being that way.
It ends up being that way. And I only know that because people really respond. There's a review by Dr. Claudia Rousseau, and that was one of the paintings, the Obispo series and Rebirth the Earth, really.
There's one more that we're going to show at Obispo. I don't know if that's next, but.
That's the painting, let's see, called Transmitter. And it came out of a series called Black Ascendants, which happened around during the Obama administration. And again, I'm focused on vermiculture and I mean, again, I'm not like, okay, I think I'll do black paintings because we're going to lose our soil in 60 years, which is a sad fact, but buy organic, you know, because of big ag and big business, big decisions that press the government to make certain decisions, buy local. But anyway, so it came out of thinking about Black as a great potential. I'm a big wanderer. I wander at night. Maybe that's why I like to go to Rehoboth or other places where I could just wander way into the night. And, you know, very interested in dream space and what comes out of dreams, and sort of this, the night that my mom passed, even though it was 3 o'clock in the morning, the room was filled with light. It was the strangest thing. I've never experienced anything like that. And it was like this presence in the room. And so that I keep returning to this, and certainly during COVID, this idea of transcendence and the body as a really, well, just like what is actually exists, you know, if 93% of all things, if what we see and what we experience sensually is only 3% of what exists, you know, what are we missing?
A lot.
So, you know, and again, the interest in metals, and you have a lot of interest in metals. No?
No, I do. Yeah, it runs in my family. I think my grandfather was a blacksmith. And actually, yeah, he founded a society called American Society for Metals, which is outside Cleveland, Ohio. No, Cleveland, Ohio. And they have a, speaking of like pyramids and metals, they have a copy there of solid aluminum pyramid, which is the only other example of the pyramid that is at the tip of the Washington Monument here in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow, that's weird.
So when they cast it, it was very hard to do at the time, to cast solid aluminum. So it was interesting.
That's weird. Don't you think? Considering that story I just told about Queen Hatshepsut.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's freaking weird. That's been happening since the beginning. Okay. Oh, wow, that's intense. I did also want to just say something, maybe we could look at the next slide, but, you know, about my going and living in Egypt, that I left, a lot of my friends maybe who are on the call, but, and maybe those, I don't know who actually, oh, okay, this is a good time to talk about transit. I want to mention this little story because it's relevant to DuPont Circle too. So I guess I worked at the, you know, I was 2 years out of working for the Phillips collection. No, I lived at the State of Richard Crusette Dart, as I mentioned, and all kinds of cosmic things happened. I think we could maybe look at the first photo, the first geometric works on paper. Okay, this is pretty cosmic, and this is very, I didn't realize, that's very influenced by Crusette Dart sculptures. I was hoping to have a body of sculptures for this show, but it's a little bit more intense. It's a whole other discipline. In any case, so I'm coming back from working for the Crusette Darts and having all these cosmic experiences. And I dropped someone off at JFK and at Royal Air Morocco, and I'm like, I'm going to be in Morocco in 2 weeks. I swear to God, I didn't even really like think, oh, I have to go to Morocco. I'm going to go to, it's on my bucket list. No. Morocco. I mean, there are lots of details. I was doing hand-painted silks, National Museum of Women in the Arts. This woman was like, oh my God, I just came back from this trip. You should go in. You know, okay. Fast forward to a year later, I have this voice that would not stop telling me, okay, you guys can turn off now, but this really happened. You have to go to Egypt. But a Brooklyn teenager said, you have to go to Egypt. So I go to a psychiatrist, I'm like, this voice, they go, oh, do you hear voices? I said, no. And they go, oh, that's good. I went, oh shoot, I'm in trouble. This just happened. I don't believe in one thing or another. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, universe, you've got to give me some answers. This is weird. I have no idea. There was just like 60 people were killed at Queen Hatshepsut's temple. Was not the optimal time to go to Egypt. In fact, okay, fast forward, I'm on, just to say that I end up there, I'm on a beach at the Red Sea, and I go, excuse me. I get an International Herald Tribune. I open the front page and it said, U.S. travel advisory, do not go to the Middle East. I'm like, is that Saudi Arabia over there? And I end up walking, you know, well, this is all really weird, but it truly happened. I'm checking the time. At the time, so we're going way back, I was painting this red hand of desire. My work was a little bit more kind of surreal and there were figures that were figurative. It was figurative work. And this red hand kept appearing, the red hand of desire, always reaching out, never attaining. And then it morphed into this kind of aqua green hand. Okay, I climb up Mount Sinai, which supposedly, at least the Bedouins told us, oh, this is the night that Moses received the holy commandments from the, you know, and of course they probably tell that to everybody.
Good accent.
And anyway, go down to St. Catherine's, which is the oldest working monastery in the world. And there is a green hand, the same exact green hand. I mean, almost like the proportions. And it was Muhammad's signature calling for St. Catherine's to be a sacred place that would never be touched.
Wow, fantastic.
And I still get chills thinking about that. But it was Julia Cameron's book, The Artist Way, where it was a quote by Joseph Campbell, "Follow your bliss." Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm not following my bliss right here in Washington right now. And I took all of my money out. End of story. Sorry to bore you, anybody who's heard this, but for me, it always encourages me to remember how, and I think it's what a lot of the paintings are about, is, I took all of my money out of my account, bought a plane ticket. I had $40 to my name and no health insurance. And then everything opened up. It was if the invisible hands of the universe were going, good girl for trusting us. Okay, just trust us. We're the invisible hands. We've been working on this earth for a really long time. We're going to be working overtime for you little humans. I don't know. I'm going off. I'm embarrassing myself. But no, seriously, I leap in the net will appear. I know that scares my friends, scares me. And it's sort of the way I've been living my life.
Successfully.
Just trusting, at the 11th hour. So I want to just look at some transit series paintings. Again, I think this idea, we can go to the next one. These are little paintings. There's 12 of them here in the exhibition. I have made maybe 100 or more. I do them on buses, trains, hotel rooms. I'm severely claustrophobic, so sometimes I do them, start them on subways. They're a way for me to focus my attention and calm down. So what I want to say about them, people ask me, God, you move around a lot. And I do, and I always have. I think it's in the genes, really. Maybe, wow, I wonder if that kind of immigrant necessity, to leave your home, to this sort of primal response to survival is just like it stays in the genes. I don't know. But I am very interested to go to places of great learning, like Cairo has the oldest working university in the world. Morocco, where was I? That's the actual oldest university in El Carouan. God, and I was wearing a scarf that I titled El Carouan at the mosque. I was just like, I don't know what the hell this means, but it's weird. Cordoba, Spain, Fez, Washington, D.C., Paris, Rome, and we didn't even talk about Rome, and I'd love to in a couple of minutes. Next, maybe we'll look at a couple more of these. So this little botanical, this series, I think there are about a dozen paintings. I got my printmaking degree from Tyler, so they're an amalgamation of painting and prints. So it's called Ode to Angelo series, and long story short, I had a little parakeet named Angelo, even though it was a girl, and there was like a very common mobster named Angelo in South Philly at the time. And then only to find out that the person who owned Caesar's gambling palace burned down my Aunt Mary's hotel in Atlantic City, kind of mobster thing. And when I studied in Rome.
Why was it burnt down?
to make a parking lot for Caesars, you know. So, but later on met a woman, a young African-American girl at the Phillips Collection. She said, oh yeah, we study your Aunt Mary at Atlantic City High. She was considered the saint of Atlantic City. So fast forward, Saint of Atlantic City coming up on your Netflix account. No, someday I'd love to make a film, because it really was about, I don't know. So you see my love for tradition, Art Deco movement, which came out of the discovery of the King Tut's tomb, and this reference to 100 years ago, Spanish influenza, and linking it to what's happening now. The sort of these ghost-like images, not just of the parakeet, but also the Sunni ink painting behind it. Was that painting is called Baptism. So I'm doing it while I'm doing Zoom, you know, calls with people and just thinking about transcendence and death and resurrection. And I guess as growing up, my mom studied to be a nun, I realized, you know, that was our belief that the soul, right? The soul transcends. There is no such thing as death. That's a physical thing. And so revisiting that idea too. The next one is also an Ode to Angelo series painting. Now that's happening later on during the pandemic, during the lockdown. This comes from a lot of photographs I took as an artist in residence at the Rehoboth Art League. This idea, we are the branches, you are the vine. And again, not from a religious sense. These are just things that kind of come into my head, and you know, I think you see the influence of Hokusai. The Hokusai show happened at the Freer. I think there's another one, the next one. Yeah, you'll really even see the Hokusai. That one just sold, luckily. And so it's a combination of gouache. So it's silkscreen, gouache, acrylic ink, and stencils.
I thank everyone for joining us, and to come on by the gallery if you're local.